Alan joined Toastmasters in 2005 and became a DTM in 2014. And oh boy, what a journey. Toastmasters has changed his life from being terrified of standing in front of a group of people to becoming a professional speaker, giving speeches and keynotes at conferences and conventions across North America. Now it's about giving back and helping others on their own personal journey. And by the way, Alan is a dual national British American and has lived in Henderson for the past 2 years and is a member of the Henderson Toastmasters. Please help me welcome Alan Blake, Distinguished Toastmaster, Building and Strengthening Your Club in the Time of Zoom. Building and Strengthening Your Club in the Time of Zoom, Alan Blake.
Thank you so much, Carol. One thing I didn't include in my intro, which I thought we could have some fun with because it's going to have you guessing, and perhaps if there's one thing you remember from this presentation, it might be this. Many people have mistaken me as a famous rock star. And I'm sure you know who. And I'd love to hear who you think it might be before I have to start giving you clues. Maybe the glasses will help. Maybe the lips will help. I can't give you any more clues. I need someone to tell me who this is. Anyone?
Bon Jovi?
I was going to say Pete Townsend, but Mick Jagger.
Mick Jagger. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I know the hair and the looks are not quite keeping up with Mick, but there you go. Yes, it's true. Ever since I came to the US in 2002, I don't know what it is, but I have been mistaken for Mick Jagger on many occasions. And that's just a nice way to start the presentation. And if nothing else, you won't remember me as Alan, but you'll remember me as Mick. So I need to thank a few people here first. I need to thank Carol, I need to thank Kathy, and in particular, I need to thank my wife, Dorothy, for helping me with this presentation. So I appreciate all the help and feedback you've given. We're a small group, so this is fantastic. I want this to be a discussion where we all participate. And obviously you can put comments in the chat box. And of course, I welcome comments directly through the audio system. So here we are, building and strengthening your club in a time of Zoom. And I'll get my cursor in the right place. And in the time of Zoom, isn't this the experience we have on many, many occasions, certainly in the early days when we were starting our online meetings with our clubs? We get in front of our computers and this weird camera and we're going back and forth and we're just trying to work out what is going on because the experience is so different to us turning up physically at our club meetings. And as Carol noted, Dorothy and I belong to Henderson Toastmasters. We are now a Zoom club and we're doing quite well. And I think we're a good example as we talk about building and strengthening our clubs of some of the things we're seeing, the challenges and the opportunities going ahead. Now, if you're like me, I'm retired, but I do some consulting and some volunteer work. So many days it's not unusual. You go from a Zoom to a WebEx, to a team meeting, to a Skype, to a Zoom. And it can be pretty darn exhausting. And here we are in a time of COVID when you think, well, I'm going to have lots of time on my hands, perhaps. And yet we all feel busier than ever. Mm-hmm. And so this is likely an issue for our clubs as it is in our daily life, that we're suffering from Zoom fatigue. So I thought this is a good opportunity to pause here and just start talking about what are the signs, the signals that we're seeing at our clubs today that are indicating that we're suffering from Zoom fatigue. And I heard in the previous webinar with Dwayne, this comment about Zoom meetings and suddenly we're struggling with membership. And I'm sure those are not the only signs we are seeing. So I wanted to hear from you. You know, what are your top of line thoughts on the key things that are happening, the key signals in your clubs that are telling you Zoom fatigue is here, Zoom fatigue has been here for a long time, Zoom fatigue is here to stay. Oh my goodness, what are we going to do? Any thoughts or comments?
One of the statements in the chat is lower attendance.
Yep. Yeah, lower attendance or infrequent attendance, maybe.
Or
People
not.
show up once a month when you have meetings every, you know, we have a meeting every Monday, but we're seeing people sort of on fewer occasions. Any other thoughts?
Not wanting to offer speeches, not wanting to do speeches.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We have fewer guests and lost members who just don't want to use Zoom. There are some people out there that I suspect are a little concerned about putting their business out on the internet.
Yeah. What else?
Mine is similar. They're just lack of interest. They want to meet, but they want everybody else to do everything. They just want to show up.
I think some of it could be that we have more choices now on where to go. I mean, the world is our oyster. We can go to a club in England. We can go to a club in Australia. Maybe we're not going to our home club, but maybe we're going to a Toastmasters club across the world.
Ah, that's an interesting thought. We need to hold on that one and explore that. Why not explore it now? That is intriguing. We had at our last meeting 2 people within the US come in, one from Kansas and one from I think it was Alabama, if I'm right. Just exploring, trying to find out what other clubs were doing, but they showed up because their own clubs were suffering from Zoom fatigue, and they were hoping to find a club that perhaps wasn't and was perhaps thriving. But that's a great thought in terms of opportunities, I think, in terms of building the club.
Another comment in the chat is members who are concerned with allowing unknowns into the meeting. And difficulty with gestures and props.
Yeah, there's always this uncertainty in terms of security and as to whether there are interlopers, and then we're constrained into this box here, right? Look, here's this box. How do I leverage this box to feel comfortable and to really get into the speeches and the way I want to present my speeches? So it can be constraining. And so some people say, well, I'll just wait until that time comes and I can go back to club meetings. Versus perhaps there's some opportunities, and we should talk about this in a moment, around how we can expand this box to make sure that we allow these people to thrive. So I just know this is the list that I partially came up with, and this is a list that actually comes from Toastmasters itself. Because there's a reality here. While we may be suffering Zoom fatigue, even in a time pre-COVID, clubs suffer fatigue. And so our comments in many respects are very, very similar. Pre-COVID, post-COVID, pre-Zoom, with Zoom, membership is down. But I think even more so, I'm sensing across the clubs that perhaps membership is down more than ever. Meetings end up being a little bit dull because, again, we're within this frame and perhaps we can't just be as dynamic as we want to be. Hence, attendance struggles. It's up and down. Sometimes guests do show up, but perhaps we just don't really know how to interact anymore versus shaking a hand and say, come in, sit next to me, and I'll talk you through the meeting. And so as a consequence, guests who've been brave enough to come along in a time of Zoom don't come back. Officers start to struggle with their roles and understanding what their roles are again in the time of Zoom. And as I heard, speakers just turn up and give it a go. They're not prepared. Sometimes the evaluations are unhelpful, or members have had enough. And yes, there are too many tech issues. But I love that comment about maybe people are going to other meetings. And this is something that we should ask our leaders of our clubs to explore and find out if this is happening, and ask those members to bring those experiences back. So let's go into that discussion, about, is your club thriving with Zoom? Because this is where we need to go, right? We know that our clubs are suffering with Zoom fatigue, and yet there are clubs out there that are thriving with Zoom. And again, I just heard from Dwayne Winnick, who's in a corporate club, and he was saying their club is thriving and their membership has grown because their members in a corporate club are on Zoom all day. And this was a time for them to have some fun. So that was a very interesting dynamic for me to hear that. And Toastmasters is doing a pretty good job on their international website. They are highlighting club experiences. They invite you to meet the masters of online meetings from around the world. And I just took these two screenshots, from China, Qatar, the United States, Saudi Arabia, India, Ireland. And they profile individuals who have gone out of their way to make their club's Zoom meeting experiences positive by being very proactive. So again, I'd love to hear from you as to what your thoughts are on perhaps you're seeing things that are happening that are helping your club thrive with Zoom, or that you think might be good ideas that would help your club thrive with Zoom. So I'll open it to the floor again for any chat comments or any comments you'd like to make directly.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Oh, thanks. Well, Storytellers is actually thriving with Zoom. They do several things. First off, they do special workshops every month, and they plan them out early, and they advertise them pretty well. But their PR person, even before he was a PR person, he was super good at inviting guests. He's very good at inviting guests. So we have international guests in storytelling who come every week. So I think that's a big deal. Plus, they have really good evaluations at storytelling. They do the round robin thing, and so they have some seasoned evaluators. So there's a lot of value in those meetings. So that's how they are doing really well.
Great. Any other thoughts?
One of the
thing.
Go
I'm
ahead,
sorry.
Chief.
One of the things that is happening is at some of the clubs, we're afraid to ask people to join. And I think we don't want to sell Toastmasters. I think we're falling behind on that, because I think, one of the clubs I go to says, don't worry if we're going to ask you to be a member. We are. And it's right up front. We're asking you to be a member. That's a great big club because people are joining. I think people are coming and nobody's asking them to join.
Yeah. Isn't that funny? It's a common problem I see. We will greet guests well, either in a physical setting or in a Zoom setting. And we say, yeah, look, if you enjoyed that, come back. Versus the direct question, we're glad you enjoyed the meeting. Join us, and we can give you all the details of how to join now. And you have your credit card with you. We can sign you up here and now. And I know that that's very direct, and sometimes people feel uncomfortable with that. But if you make it kind of fun, look, you've really enjoyed the meeting. We've loved having you here. This is the perfect time to join. We can set you up right now. And the person may say, well, I'm not sure yet. And you go, well, that's fine. Come along next time. Bring your checkbook and your credit card with you next time, and we'll sign you up then if you like it. But yes, it's a tough question for people to ask, and you need some role models out there, people who are prepared to step up and do this for you. And once you see it happen once or twice, then hallelujah. But you're right, it's such a tough question for people to ask, and yet it's such an important one to ask when people have clearly enjoyed being there. Any other thoughts? Judith?
One of the things that our club does is we have a packet of information that we send to guests, you know, that are showing up for Zoom meetings, because we have to be contacted now before the link is sent. But we have a packet that we sent, just a couple of things like the benefits of Toastmasters and the things that will happen in the club, like an agenda or something. And then once they've attended, we have a packet that we send to them that includes the membership application. So we have a pre-guest packet, and then we have a post-guest packet that's sent through the email. That seems to help.
Great. That's a great idea. So many of us perhaps haven't adapted to this reality of we have a guest and we have a physical package, and then we go, okay, let's hope they join, but the information is stuck here in my file folder rather than I've got it all in place electronically. I think that's just something that, you know, it's a thing to do, but once it's done, it's really helpful. So that's a great idea, Judith. Thank you. Any other thoughts?
As far as getting people to, you know, coming to meetings, that seems to be one of the biggest problems. How to contact people, and I know that's a PR situation, just to get people to come. I've got a couple of clubs that I'm involved with. I belong to 4, soon to be 5. And 2 of those clubs are desperately in need of members, and it's difficult to get guests to come in. And we're filling the meetings with other Toastmasters to help. We've got a nice environment. We've got a good solid meeting. We've got good speakers. We've got good evaluations. We've got a quality meeting in both of the clubs I'm speaking of, but we don't have new people coming in to see and to join and to share the fun. That's the problem, and it's a PR thing. I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah. Well, other thoughts in response to that? I have a few thoughts, but any thoughts in response to that?
I think Facebook is one of the best ways to market. If you're looking, we had talked about putting a billboard up in town for a while, and you know, people could drive by and see a billboard that says Toastmasters. But if you put it on Facebook, you got 300 million people that are passing by that see the billboard that says Toastmasters. I think if we market better on Facebook and social media, that we will get more attendance. One of the things I noticed is that if I post on the district Facebook page, I get a lot more people from outside the US than I get from inside my area.
Yeah, Facebook's a great idea. I always had, in the time of physical meetings, but I guess it works just as well in the time of Zoom, was Meetup used to work really well. And I know that the district has Meetup and it references all the clubs. But funnily enough, in the good old days of the physical meetings, people say, oh yeah, I saw you on Meetup. Now at Henderson Toastmasters, we've just had 2 new members in the last month, 2 new members. And both of them came through personal connections. One was a personal trainer for one of our members, and the other one was a work colleague who they got to know each other, of course, through Zoom. And what was happening in the chit chat at the start of a Zoom meeting before you got into it, and the chit chat at the end, lo and behold, Toastmasters came up, and that was the connection. So even within Zoom, there are opportunities for word of mouth and just saying, aha, I've got that opportunity to mention it. But it's funny, I thought Meetup would be something that would still bring people in the time of Zoom, but it's not happening with our club at the moment. Any other thoughts? Then looking at this list, one of the things, again, that was mentioned earlier was this whole idea of guests, national and international guests showing up. And one of the guests this fella who joined us from Kansas the other week said that he actually attended a meeting of a club in London. And this club only had 10 members, but somehow or other, and he's going to share some more information with us, they've got this rather surprisingly large global profile. And they were bringing in 16 guests from all around the world. Now, that's pretty exciting and shakes things up for members to have that. I'm not sure how many of those international guests you'll sign as members, but it's certainly creating a dynamic for a club when national and international guests are showing up. And then the earlier point about bringing in guest speakers, I thought was a great point in terms of just giving a different dynamic to your club and hearing different voices and seeing different styles of giving speeches and presentations. So this list is again from Toastmasters with some ads from myself. And I think you'll all agree it's the same reality about a club thriving with Zoom as well as a club pre-Zoom. That when we're thriving, we see our membership is up. There's a different dynamic overall because we have a bigger audience, we have a bigger engagement, meetings are more fun, the attendance is better. There's more people around to welcome guests. It doesn't fall upon one or two individuals. The guests join the club because, as we heard, we're not afraid to sell Toastmasters. We're absolutely out there telling people what a great thing it is. And they're telling us. They're telling us because they've seen a great meeting that they love what they saw and they can't wait to hand over the money and join us because it's absolutely wonderful value. And that's certainly one thing as we sell is we should emphasize the value that they get because it is a phenomenal deal, folks. I think we all agree that in terms of the dues that we pay. And a critical thing is the clubs have worked out how to make Zoom work well for them. And those clubs have worked out how to make this box bigger. And they've coached and trained their members to think about how they can leverage Zoom to give dynamic speeches rather than give their speeches here with the top of their head cut off or give their speeches over here. They're actually able to set up the cameras, stand up and give a humorous speech or an entertaining speech. So certainly I would recommend sharing these club experiences that are on the Toastmasters International website because it gives a profile of about 15, 20 individuals and it just highlights the things they did. And those extra steps they took then fed into the sorts of things that you see here in terms of their club becoming more dynamic. Any final thoughts on that before we move on to the next bit?
Alan, one of the comments is, I think it's also the uncertainty, how long we will continue in Zoom. Guests may be hesitant to join because once we go back in person meetings, which may not have the capability of hybrid.
Right, that's a great point. I was going to talk about hybrid at the end, just in terms of dynamics, but absolutely, I think it's worth talking about right here. Our club, Henderson Toastmasters, has got the agreement of our meeting location to now start running hybrid meetings. And as preparation for that, we've had a couple of our members go in through Zoom to observe hybrid meetings. There is a huge opportunity here in terms of getting the club going again. And to do that, the club officers have got to reassure their members that a hybrid meeting can work for those who would like to attend in person. So I see those two challenges there. The preparation, get it right, and the reassurance for people that they will be comfortable going to the meetings. And I don't have a crystal ball. None of us do. But if you were to ask me to guess, so go on, you're going to ask me to guess because I'm going to guess anyway, right? I think with our reality of Zoom and hybrid meetings is a long-term one. When I say a long-term one, at least I'm thinking 6, 9, even 12 months before we may be in a position to get back to in-person meetings and people feeling comfortable going back into in-person meetings. So I think we're in this for a relatively long haul, and therefore it behoves us to think about how we can do this well. So I love the fact that Henderson Toastmasters has gone out and benchmarked, and I love the fact that they're going to give it a go. And I'll be very honest, I'm one of the people who will stay virtual. I have good personal reasons for that in terms of the bubble that's important to us with our family and our grandkids. But I am so cheering that team on to get this right. So at the point in time, I finally say, you know what, I think I can go and do this. I can be part of that hybrid meeting in person and learn from it. So I'll stop there and see if there's any other comments, because I think that's a huge weight that's perhaps, hanging around our ankles, this uncertainty that is keeping people on the sidelines.
Alan, I have a comment or two.
Yes, please.
Anita. 2 of the 4 clubs that I belong to are hybrid. One of them is one of them has a standard meeting room capability where we're not going to be kicked out for lack of buying a meal or some other thing. And you have to set it up for it to work. You've got to have 2 people, at least 2 people set up with computers, their laptops, so that you can view the front of the room, you can view the people in the room, and the people that are then tuning in with Zoom can see everyone and vice versa. So that's working. We've got a low number, but a consistent number of people showing up at the meeting location. So we are officially hybrid. But there are people who don't like Zoom at all, who still won't go to the in-person meeting because Zoom is involved. And I don't know if it's because they're afraid of video, digital identification. I don't know what the word would be, phobias, or what the situation is, but they're just not comfortable in that environment at all. But we do have, this is Lion's Roar. It's a 25-year-old club. We've got a consistent number of, say, 5 of our 20-some people going physically to the meeting, and that's working. The other club that is hybrid, we had a low membership. So because we have a low membership, we're not going into the store frequently enough to make it worthwhile to the owner. So he's asking us now to pay for admittance there. But if we do that, we still have availability for hybrid, but our membership is low. The other 2 meetings I belong to are strictly digital, hybrid, not hybrid, Zoom. I don't know if that answered any questions or helped understand anything, but.
Well, you've come up with a new term, Zoom phobia.
Yeah.
Yeah. Heck, I don't know. I think it's just a reality here that some people are not going to come back until it's in person, and perhaps that's an excuse. And all we can do is just see if there's any follow-up conversation with those individuals to see if they really are going to come back, or if this is just the classic, I've seen all that I need to see, and Zoom phobia becomes the excuse. There are so many different realities here. It's tough to know. It's good to hear that you've been learning with hybrid, and I think this is so important. This 2-computer system, getting it right, so that the people in the room and the people online are getting the full experience of a valuable, fun meeting. So I know this is going to be baby steps, and it's going to require some perseverance and patience to make this successful. But I truly believe that this is the next step that many clubs want to take and are starting to take, and we're going to have to learn from this. And Carol and I have spoken about this, that there's clearly an opportunity for a training sometimes going forward as to how you run a successful Zoom meeting.
Lori has her hand up.
Go, Laurie.
Thank you. So there are several very successful hybrid meetings that are happening right now. That includes Morelli House Toastmasters, Bachelor and Bachelorettes, and Bon Appetit. And we're putting together a format, and it sounds like, Anita, that you also have something very similar, but we're putting that in writing so that we can publish it on the district website. Because we have, I'd say, figured that out, how to work that with 2 computers, whether you have a TV screen that you can plug in with an HDMI cable for the audience in the room. And so that makes that experience even better for the in-person audience and the Zoomers. The key that we've found that really does help is your Wi-Fi connection, and whether you have a hotspot that really makes that experience valuable, because several of these clubs meet in restaurants and their Wi-Fi connections are not the best. So the key is to have a really good hotspot to make that connectivity the best. And so if your Zoom meeting is freezing and you have an evaluator who's on Zoom and he can't hear the speech, that's not going to make that experience the best. But we're putting those guidelines together for the hybrid meetings, and I hope within the next month or so we'll have that on the district website for other meetings who are starting to go hybrid, to make that a success for them as well.
That's very
Lori?
exciting. I think that'd be
Yeah.
very helpful indeed. Carol?
Lori, just to add on that, the district will be providing on November 21st at, I believe, 9 a.m. It hasn't been published yet, so you guys are getting the pre-information. We will be doing a 45-minute tips and tricks of hybrid meetings being presented by our district director, Kristen Harrell, and her husband.
Yay.
Yay.
So it's coming.
So very quickly, we've really talked this, building your club in a time of Zoom, about working with your guests, talking about your club, publicizing your club. We talked about this. And this other interesting one, I was thinking about, we talk about open houses, and I was wondering if anyone had an open Zoom meeting and whether that had worked for them.
We've had several open houses because everyone is coming from their house. All they have to do is open their camera. We've had several open houses. They work as long as you have a special kind of program, special speaker, special activity. Workshops are excellent for this moving forward conceptual thing for bringing people in. Again, it has to be advertised, publicized, et cetera, and so forth. But yeah, we've had several fun open houses, and we're not the only. Like I said, I'm involved with 4 current clubs, soon to be 5, but we have in each area had an open house or 2 or 3 already, and they're always fun and inviting. So it's possible, and a lot of other clubs have had open houses that I'm aware of.
To branch off on that, Anita, the club growth director, Jean Williams, is currently running a social media tour. The next open house is Holistic on Monday night, and they will be talking about Eventbrite. Sage Leader is Tuesday, talking about LinkedIn. Bachelors and Bachelorettes is Wednesday, talking about Facebook. Grand Central Toastmasters is Thursday on YouTube. Valley Voices and Vices is Friday, about Instagram. And then our Free Toast Toastmaster, Jean Dunford, will be running a Free Toast Toast on Saturday. So there are open houses running. If you need the flyer, it should be on the Facebook, and I believe it should also be coming to you from your area directors.
One correction, Carol.
Yep.
Holistic is AM. It's in the morning, 11:30 a.m. That's
I was
what-
just saying it's on Monday.
Okay. I'm
Yeah,
just,
that's phenomenal. And just the clear opportunity is we've got to make sure that we get that out through help people like Satira at our club, who's our club president, and she is also an area director, to get that word out. And I'll talk to Satira, because our club certainly needs to start doing this. Our club needs to get to some of these open house Zoom meetings where we change things up, get some guest speakers in, because we have a reality here in terms of strengthening our club. And we have this strange dynamic going on, and maybe you see it in your clubs. Our club is doing really well in terms of progress on the educational part of the DCP program. Because what's happened is we have a core group of really dedicated members, and with fewer members overall, hey, they have more speaking opportunities. And they are completing level after level here. So we're doing great. But our membership is down to 12, when we used to be a club of 24, 25. So we've got this interesting dynamic. So we've got to make sure that our meetings include everyone. And even today, pre-Zoom, with Zoom, it's funny how we've not necessarily prepared people to think about their roles and how their roles can be inclusive. So one of the things we can do here in terms of strengthening our club is a little bit of training with all of our members, that when they take on a role, they have to think about, again, the overall connectivity of that meeting and who has a role and who doesn't. And I see this all too often. We have table topics and we invite people who have already had a speaking role to give a table topic. And lo and behold, at the end of it, we've had 2 people who've had no speaking role. And I'm typing furiously away, ask them to do a table topic. So again, it's this sharing expectations with our club officers and our members around how we make sure that our meetings are truly connected and that everyone is involved. And then we can start promoting the benefits of the Pathway program. Oh my goodness. Every time I look at Pathways, it's phenomenal. The choices you have, those 5 core competencies and 11 specialized learning paths. And if you're a mathematician, you can start working out all the sorts of permutations potentially that you have there. But we have something here for everyone and anyone. And yet, as new members come in, there's a little bit of nervousness and confusion as to where they should go. And yet when we get that right, because we have some people in the club who are role models and who understand pathways, and they can sit that person down. And in this instance, it's either through a Zoom, and I've had many one-on-one Zooms, and I've been brave enough to go and have a coffee, a socially distanced coffee, and just coach people through and get them to open their computer up to get them started. And boy, when you get someone started, because you have 2 or 3 people who are prepared to sit down and do that, my goodness, you see those new members take off, and you see existing members take off because they go, you know what? I've got it. I now understand how this works. And I love it as the VP of Ed now, because I'm clicking on certificates of completion for many others. And we've got new members. We said we've got those 2 new members who have been given a very positive start to their Pathways program. So let me just stop there and see if there are any other comments on that.
I have a issue I think that we are having. We are so fearful of being Zoom bombed that we're making it complicated for guests to come. We put a thing on it, well, send us an email and we'll send you the link. And it makes another step for somebody to go to. I think we need to figure out how to get away from the fear. Perhaps when you do an open house, use a different Zoom number than you do for your regular meeting and have it open. There's some way to make it easier for someone to get to the meeting rather than having to email somebody, wait for them to email back the passcode. And Zoom bombing is a complication.
Right. That's a great point, Gene. One of the things that our clubs does with our club president now, Satira has her own Zoom account. and everyone has to be allowed into the room. So in the same way, I think, Carol, you were doing that today. You see who's coming up and you allow them to come into the room. So you have to set that up in your Zoom meetings to indicate that you'll only allow attendees to come in because you invite them to come into the room. Carol, is that?
That is accurate. You can, that is one of the stipulations with Zoom these days. If you do not have a password, you cannot disable the waiting room and you have to allow everybody in. The other neat thing is if you get somebody in there that you don't want, you can kick them out too.
Thank you. I thought.
Well, once
Yeah.
they're kicked out pretty permanently too.
Yes, you can't, they cannot come into the same meeting. We have run into hiccups with that.
And it has happened where people have been kicked out because they've come in with I forgot what they call it. I think they call it Zoom bombing.
Right. So good. We have the waiting room, which I think is very powerful, and you're right. And you can then kick people out. And I think I think it's the only way forward. They used to be open because I used to run a Zoom with a small group. And now the only way I can get that going is, again, I have to have the waiting room and then people come in that way. Okay, let's move on, because I wanted to touch on this, because one of the things that people are asking about, and in terms and times of Zoom fatigue and club membership going down, there is a need for club coaches. And so I wanted to share some comments on becoming a club coach. And this is something that Dorothy and I have done with several clubs in the past in our time in Toastmasters. But the reality is, to become a club coach, you're appointed by the district director or the club growth director. You should not be a member of that club. However, after you've been appointed and you've got to know the club, there's no reason why you should not then become a member of that club. And ultimately, the job is to develop the goals that will help build and sustain the membership and for the club to become a distinguished club. So the role of the club coach is to be a counselor, a source of knowledge and ideas. One of the things Dorothy and I learned was that you cannot go storming into a club that needs help like a bull in a china shop. Smash everything in sight and tell them, we're going to start all over and here's how Alan's going to do it for you. That will not work. You need to be calm, cool, and collected, because you are going to see some crazy things and hear some crazy things about the club. You'll need to assess the environment, watch, listen, learn. I remember one club I worked with, they were down to 4 members. So meeting with a full complement of club officers was not going to be a reality. You had 4 members and they were the be all and end all of that club. So it's going to take time. You really absolutely have to, in this situation, just listen. They're going to tell you what's going on in their minds. They're going to tell you what they think they need. And then you're faced with this reality of you need to work with this group of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever it is. It might be 10, if you're lucky, to start developing an improvement plan. And you need to get those individuals, whether they're officers and members, to implement the plan. They need to own that plan. And you guide them, you instill enthusiasm, loyalty to this club, and a sense of responsibility for the club's future. You hold their hands all the way. So let's talk about that. Any comments as you think about either personally that you might be thinking about becoming a club coach, or individuals that you're hoping that you can talk to encourage them to consider volunteering to become a club coach?
I do know that there is a need out there for club coaches in our district. If you are so desirous to share your wealth and knowledge, please contact our club growth director, Jean Williams, and I'm sure she can help find a good fit for you.
Yeah, so let me comment on that as well. How long do you have to be a club coach for? Well, certainly to begin with, you're probably looking at a 6-month assignment with a club, and your intent is for them to own this development plan. And ultimately, you're looking for some deliverables as a club coach. And those deliverables are to take that club from 3 or 4 members, somehow or other, up to 20 members. The other reality is a club coach in terms of deliverables, you're looking to take that club to a point where they can achieve at least five of the distinguished club program points. If nothing else, getting the full complement of officers, getting those officers trained, getting dues delivered on time, and getting the educational program up and running so that you're seeing pathways levels completed. That is a big ask in 6 months. So it's not unusual for a club coach to then be assigned again for a further 6 months with a club to see that program through to fruition. And hey, who knows, if you become a member of that club, you may love them and say, I'm going to stay with them anyway. And this just becomes another one of your clubs and you love being with them. This is certainly the case for Dorothy and I when we were coaching a club in California, in Thousand Oaks. We faced some real struggles with this club in terms of some really entrenched practices and beliefs. But once we got through that, and yes, some people left that club, my goodness, the new blood coming in made a difference, and that club got to its 20 members and it got its 5 DCP points. So there's lots of opportunities, but in a world of Zoom, it's going to be interesting as to how the club coach operates, and in the world of hybrid meetings, it's going to be interesting how a club operates. So thoughts, comments, help.
One thing that I do know is that if you are assigned as a club coach, you have 2 Toastmaster years to accomplish that if you're looking to get that on as a requirement for your distinguished Toastmaster. And you have to help the club become a distinguished club, which is what you were talking about.
Right.
Kathy?
Well, I don't know if it's okay to ask this question, but I'm going to do it and just tell me if it's not. So for my Grand Central's Toastmasters Club, we used to meet at noon for an hour every week, but the county changed their hours so that now employees only have a half an hour. So now we're meeting every other week at 6 p.m., which quite frankly, I don't like. But so we've got maybe 5 members and we're kind of struggling, and I'm the president and I'm not building this club. And so we need help. I'm not sure what to do because I think we need a complete revamp. It's just that the reason for joining the club in the beginning is not there anymore, but I don't know. Does anybody have any suggestions, or should we just get a club coach? Or
Well, go ahead, Carol, and then I've got a thought as well.
My thought is ask for a club coach, see what you can get. Like I said, I do know that there are a couple of clubs out there looking for coaches. And we can continue to expand. And the other thing is the club coach does not have to be from Vegas. You may find somebody, and even if they aren't an official member of the district, you could ask for a mentor outside of the district and see, because we are in the area of Zoom, you might be able to reach out to another district and see if somebody else out there has some ideas that would come in and visit your meetings and help out.
Yeah, that's a great thought. I think you should certainly reach out for a club coach. And the comment you made was very interesting. I'm not sure when I joined the club originally that it's now serving the same purpose.
exactly.
I'll give you a for instance. When we went into a club that was down to less than 10 members, the name of the club was Sales Mastery. Sales Mastery. No one in that club was in sales anymore. And yet this name was putting people off to come in, or if a salesperson came in, they're going, this is nothing about sales. And so they were in this real mess of what was this club about?
Yeah, that's it.
And the breakthrough for the club was to change its name to Self Mastery. Hey presto. The members started to flood in, and within several months, the membership went from below 10 to 20. And some former members who'd left the club because of this dynamic, it just felt all wrong, they didn't know what it was about, came back. So it's a very easy example to share because it's one that we have, but it might be something as simple as that the club direction is totally wrong.
Yes.
And it needs someone else to come in, another pair of eyes to come in and help guide and coach that club to see that they need to go to a different place.
Thank
And,
you so much.
and I do have one quick thing to say is when I'm in the same boat as you and Kathy, I'm president of 3 Toastmaster clubs. And luckily there are 2 clubs out of the 3 that has a club coach, but you can never go beyond and never go above saying the following 4 words: I need your help. And there are lots of people that are going to ask for help. Heck, when it comes to open houses and asking for help, I do commercials on the District 115 Facebook page asking people for help. And you'd be surprised at how many people that you can reach out for. But the key words that you definitely want to use is, I need your help.
Thank you, Jesse. And I appreciate this so much because I know that our club needs to reinvent itself. It's just doing it. So thank you guys so much. And thank you, Lori. Thank you.
And thank you, Kathy, for being brave enough to bring that up. Thank you for doing that.
Alan, can I have one last question, comment? This is Anita. I
Yeah.
put something in chat. I don't know if everyone read it or not, but we really need to Zoom visit other clubs in our area. And
Yeah.
it's to be encouraging, and it's to help fill roles so that if they do have guests see some kind of activity going on, so everything looks productive. And there are several clubs in our area that don't have a viable 8 members. And these are the clubs that need help filling roles. And I will be happy to help fill a role in any club if anybody asks me. And I'm busy with other clubs as well. So I'm just kind of like an addicted Toastmaster. I will help. I will be there. And other people would do the same thing. The media tour that Jean set up is going to be really a way to get into meeting other clubs by way of Zoom. And these clubs, it's just a good idea to know what other clubs in our area are doing, to see how they're proficiently getting meetings along, how much help they need. And Carol, I have a question. Is there any way that we can get out a general informational chart to see which clubs are under 8? I know we have plenty.
Anita, that's all on the dashboard.
That's on the dashboard. Okay.
Yep.
All right, folks.
I can get into it.
I'm going to have to do a timeout here because I love you and we need to leave you. We've had a great discussion. The slides are obviously available, but the subsequent slides are about the online meetings, and we've talked about that as well. So I'm happy that we've covered everything here. You've been an absolutely fantastic audience. I've loved being able to have a chat with you. As you can see, I love leaning into my camera and doing this. But there you go. That's just, me rocking back and forward. So I'm not perfect. Remember, and
Hi,
Dorothy says
Dorothy.
hi.
Hi, everyone.
I've put my email in the chat. I welcome if anyone has any questions or comments or thoughts, please send me an email. And I'm more than happy to set up any one-on-one Zoom meetings if anyone wants that, to just talk about some of the things that Dorothy and I have done in our time, coaching clubs, building clubs, and starting clubs. So Carol, back